All right. Welcome back, folks, to the Face Off Sports Network. My name is Michael Hoff. You can feel free to follow me on X at the FF Realist. Follow the show at FF Face Off. Today, we are coming at you with some tight ends to start and some tight ends to sit. I'm going to give you three of each. We're going to roll right through these, give you a little bit of perspective. I know tight ends, we're going to probably mention this more than once in this short video, but tight ends were ugly in week one. We're going to try and reverse those fortunes. We're going to give you some players that we think can do better or do as they did in week one, because some did play well. So we're going to get to those names in a minute. I will tell you guys, of course, visit fffaceoff.com for all of your NFL, fantasy football, sports betting needs. And while you're here on the YouTube, feel free to like, subscribe, hit the bell. You'll be notified every time we go live. And if you have any questions or comments, whether it be on this video or if you just have a completely different question about your fantasy football lineup or a trade, fire it into the chat at the bottom there. Leave a message. One of us from this fine program will get back to you. But without further ado, let's get into this. The first tight end that I'm suggesting that you start headed into week two is Mr. Brock Bowers. Now, I mentioned it was an ugly week. Wasn't that ugly for Brock Bowers? Finished as a tight end 5, did catch 6 of 8 targets for 58 yards. The Ravens in week one allowed the 6th most points to opposing tight ends. That could be a good thing for Mr. Brock Bowers. And, here's the thing, man. He had 25% of the team's targets in week one. 6% higher than Devontae Adams. Now, listen, at the end of the year, is Devontae Adams going to lead the Raiders in targets? Yes, he will. But this is the frustrating thing about Devontae Adams being on this Raiders team right now, is that their offense, while yes, they will utilize Devontae Adams, this offense is geared more towards, hey, let's run the ball. Let's set up our quarterback for some short and intermediate passing. That's where Brock Bowers comes in. People are going to downplay Brock Bowers just simply because he's on the same field as Devontae Adams, but I think that he's here to stay. I think he's going to be productive. I think he's going to be one of the more consistent tight ends this year. I'm just being a realist here. I'm telling you, Brock Bowers is the name to start. You can start him comfortably moving forward, as far as I'm concerned. Then we're going to go into a sit. A week 2 sit is a tight end that was ranked higher than Brock Bowers entering the year. That's Mr. Evan Engram of the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against the Cleveland Browns. This man was practically non-existent in week 1. Yeah, not good. He only caught 1 of 4 targets for 5 yards. Yeah, I know. Finished as a tight end 42. Not great, Bob. While week 2 won't be as ugly as that, I still foresee him having some trouble. I still think he's someone to sit this week. The Browns did allow just 3 fantasy points to tight ends in week 1. That's not what we want out of Evan Engram. If you want to, listen, some of us can point the finger and say, well, Jake Ferguson got hurt in the game between the Browns and the Cowboys, so maybe that's why they gave up so few points. But I think this is an extension of what the Browns were able to do against tight ends last year, in which they allowed the second fewest points. You even go to the year prior, they were top 10 of fewest points allowed. So there is a trend, and I know people roll their eyes. You say, oh, you're looking at last season's numbers. But there's a trend sometimes, like how we always know player A may be great on the road, or this guy indoors, is fantastic. Well, apparently tight ends don't do great against the Cleveland Browns, at least not on a consistent basis. So listen, things are going to get better for Evan Engram, but this week is not going to be that week. So I'm imploring you to sit him. And if I can give you somebody to start in place of him, I'm going to go with a guy who might even be available on your waiver wires, actually, which, by the way, check out our waiver wire content. I know waivers have already ran for you guys, but if there's a player that maybe didn't get picked up, maybe go ahead and go get him. This guy, though, we'll see if he's picked up in your leagues or not. It's Mr. Colby Parkinson of the Los Angeles Rams. He's going to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Listen, there were several disappointments in week 1 at tight end. We've already addressed this, but there were some surprises, and Colby Parkinson, to me, was one of them. Listen, he didn't light the world on fire, but, He failed to score a touchdown, but he caught 4 out of 5 targets at 47 yards. That was good for the tight end, 7 on the week. The obvious factor in all of this with suggesting Colby Parkinson is that Puka Nacua is out for at least the next 4 games. Um, yes, you can look at a Demarcus Robinson who could step up and catch some passes here. He's the wide receiver for the Rams, but I think Parkinson is going to be a part of this offense moving forward. Not, not to a Travis Kelsey level, but enough that he could be consistent for you, especially if you're streaming tight ends. Cooper Cup last week had 21 targets. I know Cooper Cup people who roster him, they would give their left arm for 21 targets every single week, but that's just not a sustainable, realistic thing. While the Cardinals allowed just 4.4 points of tight ends in week 1, the reoccurring theme here is going to be the same thing. It's going to be this Cardinals defense is going to be bad. They're going to give up a lot of points. I'm telling you now, Parkinson's going to have his second straight week as a top 10 tight end. You can quote me on that, please. So as we get on to the next player, a second player to sit. And listen, I'm going to do a little bit of a victory lap here. I told you guys last week to sit Cole Kmet. I'm telling you again to sit Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears. Listen, it doesn't help that Caleb Williams only completed 48.3% of his passes. Then there's the preseason where we heard reports that Gerald Everett was going to kind of eat into some of the snap counts that Cole Kmet had. Some people were scared of Cole Kmet because of it. Some people chose not to believe it. Well, it became a reality in week 1 because it was actually Everett who was lined up more during passing plays than Cole Kmet was. That's a scary, scary thing. So you add Caleb Williams only completing 48.3% of his passes. That number is going to go up. Caleb Williams is going to get better. There's a reason why he was drafted number 1 overall. But I think there's going to be some tough sledding here. And I mean, in their season opener, the Houston Texans, whom Cole Kmet and the Chicago Bears will play, they didn't allow a single point to the tight end position. Single point. Not a half point, not a full point, not 0.8, nothing. Absolutely nothing. So, this is another guy, like I told you with Evan Engram. There's going to be better weeks for Cole Kmet. To me, Cole Kmet has always been best used in DFS when we catch him when he pops, or if you have him in a best ball league. This way, you don't have to worry about the dud weeks that he gives you. I think week 2 is going to be another dud week, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to see him turn it around, and eventually he will. This next start I'm going to give you, I want to put a disclaimer here. This start is for deep leagues. If you're in deep leagues, or if you're in a tight end premium league, this is a player to stream for this week. So if you're in a 10-team league, if you're in a 12-team league, if God forbid you're in an 8-team league, which is like, what are we doing? Just go with me on this, okay? Just don't complain. Next player to start, the last player to start, is going to be Mr. Hayden Hurst of the LA Chargers. He is going up against the Carolina Panthers in what is going to be a revenge game. Hayden has had the opportunity to rack up several revenge games, but albeit, here we go. He's going to be in Carolina. Last week, Hurts finished as a tight end 18, had 2 receptions for 33 yards. I understand that is not exactly appetizing, but playing the Panthers in week 1, like I said, the Panthers allowed the most points at tight end position in week 1. Included in that is 2 touchdowns. Tight ends in week 1 were hot garbage. If Hurst is able to get into the end zone, which I think he can against this Carolina Panthers defense, he's already made his fancy day. Forget about the yards he'll get. Forget about the receptions that he gets. He'll already return value there. And week 1 was so bad that if you got 7 or 8 points from tight end, you were happy with it. That's how bad the tight end position was. Now, we'll see how much that bleeds into week 2 and beyond. But again, if you're in a deeper league or a tight end premium league, I like the idea of starting Hayden Hurst in week 2 against the Carolina Panthers. We'll see if I'm doing a fantasy football walk of shame after that, or we'll see if I'm doing a victory lap. Hopefully it's the victory lap, of course. All right, let's get into our last player. that I'm going to ask you or suggest to you to sit. Before I get into that last player, I will tell you, beautiful people, please feel free to like this. Feel free to subscribe to our show. Hit the bell icon to be notified every single time that we go live. We got live content coming up the next 2 days with fantasy football start sits. We're going to answer all your questions there. If you have any questions on this video, fire them into the comment section. One of us will get back to you, guaranteed, and in timely fashion, might I add. So the last player that I'm going to tell you to sit is going to be the same player I told you to sit last week. I told you to sit Kmet last week. That worked out. I'm telling you to sit this guy, and I think it's going to work out. That being Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Denver Broncos. Listen, he finished as a tight end 16 last week. I don't trust Arthur Smith in this offense. I don't know how many times I could say this. He's also going up against a defense that allowed 2.1 points to tight ends last week. And mind you, with that, Noah Fant was targeted 4 times, and he only got 2.1 points out of it. I don't believe in Arthur Smith, and I don't believe in this matchup. I think the Broncos defense, while on paper headed into this year, some people thought that there was an edge in the passing game in terms of fantasy football production. I think the Broncos look pretty good in week 1 defensively. Not the greatest, but better than last year. So I think they're a harder out in terms of fantasy football, and I think we're going to see that in terms of Pat Freiermuth. Freiermuth will have some weeks where he'll pop. He's a lot like Cole Kmet in the sense where you'd like to have him in best ball because this way you don't have to deal with the headaches of when he gives you these bum weeks. But I think this is another bum week from Pat Freiermuth. Sorry to say. I hope he eventually turns things around, and I think he will. So there you go. But that's going to do it for our tight ends to start and our tight ends to sit. Just to go over that list one more time, my week 2 starts at the tight end position: Brock Bowers, Colby Parkinson, and Hayden Hurst if you're in a deeper league. My sits for week 2 at the tight end position: Evan Engram, Cole Kmet, and Mr. Pat Freiermuth. So, yes, that is going to do it for this lovely little short today. Until next time, stay thirsty, be kind to one another. Catch you guys on the flip side. Cheers.